A possible government shutdown is just a few days away. The Senate voted 77-19 last night to take the first step on a short-term spending bill. The House is focusing on a long-term budget, and Speaker Kevin McCarthy is still trying to win over a handful of right-wing holdouts.
In a tight majority like this, 4 members can stop anything. Now we were able to get members in a better place and be able to move forward. But the great thing is, I never give up.
Nancy Cordes is in Washington, keeping an eye on the government funding fight for us. Nancy, good morning.
And it is quite a fight, Anne Marie, although we did see last night an important step forward. The Senate, as you mentioned, striking a deal to keep the government open through mid-November at least. Now, this plan includes funding for Ukraine and wildfire and flooding disaster relief. It appears to have big bipartisan support in the Senate, but don't get too excited because the problem is still over in the House, where conservatives are threatening to overthrow the Speaker if he doesn't bend to their demands to cut spending and to break Ukraine war funding out of that deal. Last night, the House finally managed to clear one hurdle, inching closer to a vote on 4 separate spending bills. But the best case scenario is that that approach would still cause big swaths of the government to shut down this weekend.
So is there any chance, then, that GOP senators could sell their proposal to House members, in time for the deadline?
You know, it's not even clear that the Senate will be able to completely pass their bill in time for the deadline. You've already got at least one conservative Republican, Rand Paul of Kentucky, saying he's going to do what he can to slow the process down. He doesn't like the Ukraine funding in the bill. He doesn't think that a short-term spending plan should be rushed through. He has the power, even as just one senator, to do that. And so even if this bill in the Senate to fund the government, keep the lights on for 45 days, has massive bipartisan support, if he slows it down, that means they're not going to even be able to pass it in the Senate before this weekend's deadline. And then you've got to get it over to the House, where it has an uncertain future as well. Yeah. And so that's why there's so much concern about all the approaches that we're watching right now.
And then taking a look at the fight in the House, this is the sort of thing that many warned Kevin McCarthy would find himself up against. More right-leaning members of his party not wanting the government to spend any more money or wanting to curtail government spending. And he was going to have to compromise. And if he couldn't compromise, he wasn't going to be able to make a deal. What does this say about the strength that he holds, or lack of strength, as Speaker in the House? And is he going to have to, ask for some Democrats to help him out?
I have to be honest, I think almost any speaker, Republican speaker, would be in the same situation that McCarthy is in right now, because the House is so closely divided that, you can have just 4 or 5 people taking a stand. And when you've got, very close to a 50-50 House with a slight majority for Republicans, it can really hold everything up. Look over in the Senate, where you see the same situation in reverse. Democrats have an incredibly slim majority. Then one Democratic senator, Joe Manchin, we talk about him a lot, has the power to block things, to put pressure on Democratic leadership if he wants to. And we're watching that play out now in the House, and McCarthy is really stuck.
Yeah, I think you make a great point that with such a limited margin, almost any speaker would find themselves trying to make deals to win a few people over. While we have you here, got to ask you about Democratic Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey. Now, his other senator for New Jersey, is calling on him to resign. It's getting louder and louder. What can you tell us about the bribery charges, what he's facing, and the general sort of mood about him now?
Well, the dam really broke yesterday. I have to say, we've now got more than half of his Democratic Senate colleagues, including Cory Booker, his fellow home state senator, calling on him to resign. That is really significant. You don't see that happening very often. Maybe you see them saying that he should step down from his position as the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee as this legal process plays out, but that he should be afforded the presumption of innocence. Not in this case. They are not necessarily saying that he's guilty, but they're saying that these charges are so serious, the charges that he accepted bribes from Egypt, that he needs to step down from the Senate. I think part of the reason that they aren't giving him the benefit of the doubt here is because this is the second time that he has faced a federal indictment. He was able to get past the charges the last time around, but clearly they think that this is incredibly serious. Reporters caught up with Menendez yesterday. He sort of laughed off their questions about this. He said, "What's wrong with you?" He said that he's innocent, so he is not going to step down. He's quite defiant. But he does face his first hearing in a New York courtroom this morning.
Yes, he does. Nancy Cordes, thank you.